Hi all, welcome back. In this video, I'll try to explain everything you need to know about IIQ application onboarding. So I will be covering like what is application onboarding, why it is required, how to start, common connectors, and basic issues and troubleshooting steps. So let's see what is application onboarding and why it is required. So the point of having SailPoint IIQ or any IAM tools is to manage identity within organization. So in the organization, there may be a multiple application. Let's say there will be like a number of web service application. You'll be having Active Directory, some JDBC like Oracle databases and all. Then if there are some legacy applications, we can have a delimited file as well, and SaaS applications like Atlassian, Zira, or other applications. So the whole point of having any IAM tool is to manage identity within these applications. So how it happens? Like first, we need to onboard any application into IAM tools. Like here, we are considering SailPoint IIQ, right? So first, we need to onboard the applications. So what basically application is like maybe some REST API or web service applications, or Active Directory. There may be multiple domains in Active Directory, then JDBC, delimited file, and SaaS applications. So each applications will have some set of users. So we call it as identity, right? So basically how it happens is in SailPoint IIQ, we call everything as identity, right? So we call everything as identity. Then for each application, there will be a link and link object. So we call it as a link or account as well. There will be a number of links for each. So this may be AD and this may be delimited, and this may be like, let's say, LDAP or some web service. So everything will be linked to identity. So we call this as application. So now we have three objects, that is identity object, link object, and application object. So when you're onboarding any application, so it will be considered as an application object itself. So again, before understanding how we onboard application into IIQ, right, you need to understand like how these applications work, like how Active Directory works, what is domain, why we need IQ service and all. Means some of the application might require some external applications, like Active Directory required IQ service for provisioning, and mainframe application required connector gateways. And again, depends, like some applications like as I mentioned, Windows application require IQ service, and mainframe like RFAC and ACF2 and all required connector gateway tools. So here what you need to understand is, so application onboarding in the sense there will be application. It may be anything like as I mentioned, like web, AD and all. So here we have SailPoint, let's say IIQ. So you will be adding the application into IIQ, onboarding the application in IIQ, and which will have like attributes. This will have attributes, right? So this attribute can be populated, like you have to map it to identity using identity mapping. And again, you'll be having link. So all these things I have explained in the previous video, like in aggregation, how things happens. But again, first you need to onboard application into IIQ, and user will be like you can push user to IIQ through aggregation. Without aggregation, you can't bring a user to IIQ. So first step is onboarding application to IIQ. And again, there are set of operations or process you need to do, and you need to run aggregation. Means again, we have account and account group aggregation. So two things are there here. Again, like how these things, like how like application attributes map to identity and all, we'll see later. But the on high level, there will be application like Active Directory, JDBC. Then you will be creating new application within IIQ. Then you'll run aggregation. So aggregation will populate application attribute to identity. Again, it will create a new link for each user, and it will tag to IAQ. Means how it happens is, let's say, as I mentioned, there will be an identity object, let's say user1, and when you onboard any, like say AD or JDBC, there will be a link tagged to this user1, and that is like identity. Within identity, user will have links like AD, LDAP and all. And again, user will have some set of attributes, that is like using aggregation. So identity mapping, again, aggregation and identity refresh mapping and all will happen. That mapping you need to do through identity mapping, like which attributes need to be tagged to identity and all. Example, let's say you are onboarding some HR application like a Workday, SAP or whatever it is, or Salesforce. So whenever you are onboarding any HR application, say that will be a source of identity. So you need to remember this term, source. It's a source of identity or authoritative application. So like how it happens is, let's say you have identity mapping. So what is identity mapping? In the sense, within identity, as I mentioned, you'll have, let's say this is identity, and there will be a first name. I'm just giving an example, last name and all. So you'll be having source and target. Source mapping and target mapping will be there within identity. So here, how you are mapping, as I mentioned, let's say your HR system, like, so your authoritative application is Workday, that is HR. So when you onboard this, or when you run aggregation and identity refresh to IAQ, so the first name, last name needs to be, means let's say if you want to tag Workday's first name and last name to IAQ, you have to do it in identity mapping. So inside identity mapping, you will have a source mapping. So you can have multiple application, like you can have AD, you can have Workday and all. So priority wise, like which one will be the first one will be tagged as its source of attribute, like source of value. So here for first name, you can add Workday. Again, you can add AD, you can add LDAP. So same thing can be done here. So what happens is, during after aggregation, during refresh, what it will do is, there is an identity refresh attribute you can add. It will check Workday's attribute, Workday's first name attribute, whatever you have given, it will link with, or it will tag or map with first name of identity. So again, as I mentioned, we have identity object. Within that, you will have attributes. So these attributes, like first name, like you will have first name, last name, email and all. And again, there are other number of attributes. This is for identity. This is again IIQ's value. And you will be having links. And again, it will be AD link. It will be HR system link. Within that, again, you will have some attributes, some set of attributes. Differs from application to application. You will be having first name. In case of Active Directory, right, like first name is like given name. Last name is surname. Again, it differs from application to application. Maybe in HR system, however you are defined within the schema, the same thing will be there. And the same attribute schema value need to be provided in the attribute mapping. So again, during aggregation, the identity will be onboarded to the users. Means the first step is onboarding application. The next step is onboarding users, so that those users can be managed, like for provisioning the access, for administrator, like again disabling, enabling, terminating, and users. Again, the next step will be auditing, or for identity governance. The other main advantage of SailPoint IIQ is IGA, right? Like governance, like you can have frequent certification campaign, like manager certification, like access certification, application certification, and all. So for that we need identity. So the first step is like onboarding application. First step, app onboarding, that you need to do manually, like you can have template and all. We'll see how we can do. Next, user onboarding. And this can be done through aggregation. Then next will be entitlements. Entitlements or groups onboarding. This again aggregation. So then once we have users and its entitlement, right, you can like go for provisioning or like lifecycle events, or you can have certifications. This is why have been why we need application onboarding and all. And again, the whole point of having IAQ or any IAM tool is to manage identity. So for that we need identity from different set of application collaborate within IAQ. And means again, SailPoint or any IAM tool is like center point of multiple identities. So you will have one identity which contains multiple applications and segregate within IAQ one tool, and you can manage those things. So how to start, like how you can start onboarding applications and all. So first, create a common onboarding form. So this will be available in SailPoint community as well, and also I have added in my Git repository. So like basically what it says, like how it starts is like some application team will reach you, like they will reach IAQ team. They'll say, okay, we need to onboard this application for some provisioning, certification, or manage within organization. And also for that, what you need to do is first you need to ask what kind of application it is, who is the owner, provisioning is required or not. There are again a number of questions are there. You can prepare your own onboarding form, you can have Excel sheet or a document, whatever way you want. You can have onboarding form and provide it to the application team. They will provide you they will fill the details. They will provide it you. Then you can go forward. Like again, the next step is identifying the connectors. So you need to ask them walk through their application. Sometimes it will be like there are, again, as I mentioned, we have a number of connectors. So we have Active Directory. So for any web service application, again we have web service. So let's say if they don't want any provisioning, they just want to store identity in IAQ for certification purpose and all. And if it is legacy application, you can go for a delimited. Then if it is Oracle DB, you can go for a JDBC. And again, there are a number of connectors for SaaS. You have Atlassian. Means again, if you want to go for scheme, you have a scheme-based applications. You have LDAP. And for HR application, you have Workday, SAP, tools and all. So the first thing is like get the required basic details like owners, why they need application onboarding and all. Then identify the connectors. Then means if you want to onboard the same application, same delimited or active directory or any application repetitively, right? Like if you have to onboard a number like 10 plus delimited files. So what you can do is you can have a generic template where like you can create a generic rules. Like I will discuss what are the rules we have, like aggregation rules, connector rules, provisioning rules and all. You can have a generic rules for a single connector. You can have generic rules for connectors, like instead of having or instead of creating rules for each connectors or each application, right? You can have a generic one like for correlation or creation or provisioning and all. Then while onboarding you can have a simple a template. So just model it and create a new application or onboard new application. Then the next thing is understanding the target. Like this has to be done here itself. But again, means if you have a basic knowledge, like you need Active Directory or web service application and all, you need to understand the application as well. So this works or this helps in many ways. Like let's say you want to onboard some web service application, and you need to understand how creation happens. So the operation, the basic operation for any application onboarding is like create. You have to create, enable, disable, then delete if required, then provisioning. So provisioning in the sense you can have add, remove. So these kind of things. So understanding application is some web service application by sending means web service application requires like REST API knowledge and also that is like if you want to update any user's access. Some applications supports like just sending add operation with the required entitlement. Some requires existing entitlements as well. That is like if you are requesting group 1, you have to send the existing group for that user as well. Let's say user has group 2, 3 and all. So with that, like while sending a body, you have to add 2, 3 to the requested entitlements. For that again you need to write some rule before operation rules and all. So again you need to understand like how operations, like all these operations, create, enable, disable, delete, provisioning or any add, remove, provisioning works. The same goes for Active Directory, JDBC scheme and all, because for JDBC and web service you need to write the rule. Like for JDBC how it happens is there is 2 types of rule. One is the global rule where based on the operations like create, disable, enable, you can have a prepared statement or SQL queries can be executed. Again they're like operation specific, like for each operation, create, enable, disable, provisioning, you can build a rule. So these how it is. Like first you need to understand how application works, and you need to have some basic knowledge of all these applications like before onboarding that application. So let's say you are onboarding some Active Directory, you need to know about like what is domain, right? And you need to know like if email provisioning is required, you need to know about Exchange as well. And again as I mentioned, each or some applications or some connectors like Windows connectors or mainframe connector required external tools like IQ service for Windows, and you need connector gateway for mainframe. So these are the external tool required, and again this has to be installed in Windows servers. You need to have some basic knowledge on Windows servers as well, like how we can install IQ service, enabling TLS and all. And some application required importing certificate into the system. Again you need to have basic knowledge on that, otherwise connectivity issue will be there and all. So then the next thing is basic knowledge on tools. The tools, as I mentioned, like for Active Directory, so you can have means if you are an admin, you can log into the Windows server where the domain controller is installed. Means those are the servers which you configure in the Active Directory. So you can log into domain controller, user group, app, like add user group application. Through that you can view the users. Means it's like browser. There will be a browser for each applications like LDAP and AD. So what you can do is you can install some application, or you need to know basic on some LDAP or AD browsers like Softera or Apache and all. So Apache directory. So you need to have some hands-on on Apache and all. Then for JDBC or any DB related things, you need to have again SQL browser, workbench and all. And for web service application here, again SQL browser or workbench. For web service, you need to have Postman or any IDE. You can add within IDE, you can add some extension, and you can use REST API calls. Means for REST API calls, you need those details or those knowledge as well. Again, for Linux or some Windows applications, you need Windows and Linux knowledge as well. These are the basic tools which used for connecting target systems. So let's say you onboard some application, and for testing purpose, like you have enabled or triggered create or enable disable operations, and if you need to verify whether creation happened, deletion, modify happened on the target system, right? You need to log into the application, and you need to do these things. You need to use Apache browser or SQL browsers to view modification or replicating or not. So these are the basic things which you need to understand before onboarding the application. So let's see some common process for onboarding any connectors. So these are the common things, like there are some tabs available. So if you want to onboard any application, you have to go to application. So you have to go to application tab and new application. Existing will be available within the application page itself. You can click on new application. The first thing you need to do is you need to select the connectors. So there will be a list of connectors available. So before I have mentioned that you need to know, or you need to identify which connector you need to onboard for any target application. So based on the connectors, IIQ will load or it will refresh the page, and it will provide you the some set of tabs. So the tabs are like details will be there, configuration details, correlation, accounts, risk, activity, data source, unstructured targets, rules, and password policies. So within details, so again, as I mentioned, like name, owner, description, application type is the connector type which you have selected for the specific application. So as I mentioned, you will have having Active Directory direct, or for mainframe you'll be having ACF2 and all. Again, web service, for any web service application we have only web service connector, and for JDBC or Oracle database you have JDBC, and for delimited file you can go for delimited and all. So within details you have means these are the important things, like you have application type, the connector which you need to select. You will be having AD direct, delimited, so you'll be having JDBC, web service and all. So you have to connect, or you have to select a one. Then based on the selection, IIQ will load the required tabs and the options. So each connector has some extra things, like depending upon the application or connector you have selected, like the connection configuration will be there. So I will discuss what are connection configuration and all. So based on the selection, the required connection configuration will load, and you have to provide the details. Then authority application. So you need to know what is authority application, non-authority application and all. So authority application, in the sense, it's a source of identity. And that will most of the organization for most of the organization it will be HR system itself. That is like, so you onboarded to the organization, and that in that organization there will be HR system, and like your details like first name, last name, manager details, your email ID or whatever basic details will be logged within the system. So that will be considered as your authority application. You can have multiple authority application, but why we need authority application in the sense that's a source of value or source of value for your identity. That is like you can't have multiple means multiple names, right? Like you can have like let's say Rahul, you can have Rahul, then again in another application you might have something else, but for IIQ it needs to consider some authority one, so which is like it's a source of identity. So that will be considered as the genuine or actual value for your identity. And again, as I mentioned, the most of the organization follow HR system as a source of identity, and that configuration or that option need to be selected in the details tab itself. As I mentioned, you can have multiple authoritative application inside. Again, while configuring identity mapping, you can add those details as well. Then native change detection. So there is an option called native change detection. Again, within that you have multiple option like native change operation, whether create, modify, delete, and again attribute detected. You can have user defined or entitlement. So what is native change detection? It is like ANCD. So that is like you have a target system here, any application, then IAQ, right? So let's say you have modified directly on target, any user access got modified directly onto the target, and during aggregation what happens is means if you have configured a native change detection for that particular application, during aggregation again it will check any changes happen to a user on target directly. So what happens is a new means it will log the changes and all. So again there is a concept called trigger snapshot. So within that the native change detection is logged, so that based on the things you can create an event. That is like, let's say user got added to some admin account, or some attribute, the privileged attribute got modified. Based on the modification you can trigger the event within IAQ. You can trigger event like you can trigger a workflow, and you can send email to the manager, and you can audit within IAQ as well, saying okay, this got modified, this for this user, this attribute on this day and all. So to trigger any events you can have a native change detection. Again there are operation for it, like let's say account got created, or for create operation if you want to have a event, or you have to detect create operation, or if you want to detect modify operation or delete operation, you can select those things within a first tab, details tab itself. So these are the important options, like application type, the connector, then if you want you can give description, then authority application, native change detection you can give. Then you have some like extended attributes will be there. Again based on your organization you can provide those things. The next tab is the important tab, that is configuration. So you have settings, schema, and provisioning policies. So here the first thing is setting here, right? So each application, right? So as I mentioned, means you should know this, like each app will have certain connection parameters. Means that is, if you want to connect to any DB, any database, you need server, plus DB plus username plus password. So server username and password will remain like is common for each connectors. Like if you want to connect to any system, you need the system name and username and password, right? For DB, this is what required. For Active Directory, again as I mentioned, IQ service detail is required if provisioning is enabled. Then domain controller DC, again here the same thing, that is you need server details, username, password and all. Again domain DN will be there here, that is like OU means how Active Directory is designed, right? It's a there will be a root for it, that is let's say DC some organization example, let's say it's example and DC com. So this is the root. Under that you will have a user, means it's a basically it's a root, let's say like this user group, again multiple users will be there, again within that you can have multiple OUs, so this will be considered as OU. Again this is as I mentioned user OU, group OU, within user OU you can have multiple OU, again admin, test, again multiple OU you can have, again group OU, like git, multiple OU you can have. So this will be the root as I mentioned, like example.com, this need to be provided in the DN. And you can enable if TLS means usually SailPoint recommend TLS enabled. So for Active Directory these are the things required. Again for LDAP, like for any application as I mentioned you need server basically, username, password, these are the common thing. And for delimited file, again for let's say delimited file, so you need to place a file, right? You need to place file in some server or some path, and that path if you want to access that path, again you need the path details, like maybe it's in the local system or some secure FTP. So for this again if you want to log into this server, so the path will be in the sense it's a server, within server let's say you will be having some folder, within that let's say some user data folder, within that you have placed a file, right? You need the path for it, like user data file means you need to place it in the delimited file with the server detail, and for that again username, you need username and password to log into the server and get that file. And same goes for web service application. So in case of web service application there is a authentication mechanism, right? So you can have a basic authentication, you can have OAuth, you can have custom and all. So again based on that again you need to means OAuth, you can have a grant type and all. So for that again you need means refresh token, access token, those things, those details. Usually there will be a base URL for it, and for base URL again the auth type will be there. If it is basic it's again simple username and password, and SailPoint won't recommend this. At least you have to go for OAuth, or you can have a custom one to generate access token and all. So this is about web service application. Again for each application as I mentioned, the common thing or generic is you need a username, that will be a service account. Make sure when you're onboarding any application, the first thing you need to understand is that service account has some admin access. So before onboarding I forgot to mention one thing is you need to go through here before start anything, you need to understand the target application connector as well. So there will be connector documents for each connectors. Go through the documents like how operation is performed, what kind of the service account. For each service account there will be some permissions, like admin level access is required, what kind of access is required. You need to request for target team to provide those things. And for each service accounts you need a username and password, like you can log into that application and get the required details. So the whole intention of having application is to get the users detail, right? And for that you need permission, and that permission need to be granted to the service account. So that service account details will be logged in setting tab. Each connector has its own settings. As I mentioned, for AD you need all these details. For DB you need these details. You need to have SQL query added to this as well. So basically, what is onboarding? Like how connector can onboard a users to IAQ. Means there will be like some command or some query need to be executed on target system, which will retrieve the users. In case of a DB, you need to specify the SQL query, like select user first name, last name, email, access from provided table. Then IIQ, what it will do is it will execute that SQL query on that server, on that database, and it will retrieve the users. So then as soon as you provide all these details, do the test connection. Make sure you're able to connect to the system. And again, so before doing all these things in IAQ, what you can do is you can have some browsers, as I mentioned, like SQL browser, Apache browser, or REST API for Postman and all. So make sure connectivity is fine from your local system. Then go to IAQ. Then comes schema. So here it's a like application level mapping. So again, application level mapping in the sense you'll be having object type, account, and group. You can add extra object type as well, but let's say these two are the common things. So here you need to specify what are the attributes you are onboarding, and the same attribute value need to be present in the target as well. So again, it depends, or it might change from application to application. Sometimes like so there is a attribute called feature string. I already explained this, but feature string. So here this will be available in each connector. So in the application object, you have to go to debug page. Means you can't do it through a UI. You have to go to debug page, and there will be some set of strings like provisioning, discover schema, enable, disable, and all. So you need to add a provisioning. If provisioning means, let's say if you don't want to enable provisioning for any application, you have to remove provisioning from that connector. And if you want to discover schema, you need to add discover schema in the feature string from debug page itself, so that the schema will be discovered automatically. Let's just discover it, like it will provide a default required attributes for each application. So here there are concept called native object type, and you will have identity attribute and display attribute. Identity attribute is native, sorry, it's basically it is native identity. That is, using that attribute you can provision the access. Like, means say if you want to disable, enable, or add some entitlements to the users, right? That attribute will be considered as a native identity. Means that attribute need to be added in the access request and all. Means account request in the plan. So you'll be having plan. Within that you will be having account request. In that account request there will be a native identity. So that native, you need to add that attribute as a native identity. Means in case of AD, it is SAM account name. Again, for other connector it depends, like whatever attribute which you have mentioned in the identity attribute, ID attribute, option, right? That will be considered as a native identity. Display attribute means when you go to identity warehouse in the account tab, that display means whatever the attribute you have provided in the display attribute will be displayed there. And attributes, each has attributes, and here you will be having like attribute name, description, type, whether again let me say you have a name, you have a description, you have a type here, type, string, group, int, boolean and all. Then you have properties. Again, this is another important thing. So here you can select on the gear button if it is multi-valued. In some case, like in case of AD, member of is multi-valued, and most of the time like entitlements, whatever the entitlements are managed attributes are there, right? Those will be considered as a multi. So it's a multi-valued. You have to click on that edit gear button. So you will see advanced properties like managed, entitlement, multi-valued, correlation key, mineable and all. So what you have to do is you have to click on required option. Means if it is a group object or group attribute, right? Let's say in case of AD it is member of, let's say in some application you have added it as a groups. So what you have to do is for these things you have to consider it as a managed and entitlement. So the difference between these two things is like, so if you tag it as a managed, so as soon as account is aggregated, and during aggregation you have to give an option, means both in aggregation and identity refresh you have options called promote managed attribute. So the attribute which is tagged as managed will be promoted in the manage attribute column. So for those things you can request, means users can request for those entitlements. And why entitlement is required in the sense, if you tag any attribute, any users attribute as again sorry any users attribute as managed, any managed, right? So in that case managed and entitlement, so managed will promote it to a managed attribute object, means it will create a managed attribute object and users can request it. And if you promote it as an entitlement, that can be tagged in the certification process. So in the certification process you can use those entitlements for certification and all. And you have multi-valued in the sense, again for usually users will have multiple groups, entitlements and all, right? Again, if any value in your connectors required a multiple values for any attributes, so in some cases like telephone will be multi-attribute, and OU also can be multi-attribute in case of Active Directory and all. In those cases you can add you can select multi-valued in that option. Then once everything is set, let's say you have added first name, last name, group, email and all, just click on preview. So what happens is in the preview you can preview the details, like it's just test the things like all the attributes are coming or not. It will means only a few identity data will be displayed there to make sure that there is no issue on retrieving the required identity details. The same goes for groups. You will be having name, description, properties and all. You need to specify the required details. There also will be having identity attribute and also you need to mention what attribute you are adding as an native identity, and display as well. So the display attribute will be displayed in the entitlement tab. So this is what you have to do it in the schema. Then we have provisioning policies. So we have provisioning policy tab within configuration. So we have only 3 tabs within configuration, and that is setting, schema and provisioning policies. So provisioning policy is, let's say, so user is let's say if user is available in target, if you do or if you run the aggregation, it will be onboarded to the IAQ. Let's say if user is not present, if user is not present and you are submitting request for the user, so what will happen is IAQ trigger create operation. So it will trigger create operation. To trigger create operation means for each target system there will be some required attributes, right? Means without that attribute account won't be created. You will get an error saying SAM account can't be null, distinguished name can't be null, email can't be null. Means in case of AD, I'm saying again for web service application, some case like email is required, first name last name and all is required. So all those things required attribute need to be added in provisioning policies. Means again I will show all these things in XML as well. In the provisioning policy, what you need to do is you need to add means for create, for update, you can add a form here, policy form. Inside form, let's say for first name, how you get, like what you can do is identity dot get attribute, means you can pass required details within that. Same goes for last name, means you can do like this, you can add first name last name and all. So what we are doing is when user requests for any access and if he is not present in target, get the details like first name last name details from identity attribute. So how it happens is like in IAQ you will be having multiple, as I mentioned, you will be having multiple attributes, first name last name and all, and this is within IAQ, and this got populated maybe based on other application, maybe some AD or Workday, and you are submitting request for other applications like web service application. So when you are submitting request for web service application and you are not present in that web service application, what IAQ will do is, or you can create a provisioning policy saying, okay, when a create operation is triggered for a web service application, pick the details from IAQ, that is first name last name and all, then populate those values and send it to the target system as a create or during create operation. Let's say if a first name is null, so what happens is when you submit request, a form will be created, and again during a request submission you have to provide those details. If you added those as a required, means you have to create provisioning policy. In the provisioning policy you need to add all the required attributes and how to retrieve those values and all, and means again I will show those things, but this is the process. Like this is why we need provisioning policies. Again, for creation, most of the times we add it for creation. So let's say IAQ, when IAQ triggers a create operation for any users, IAQ will populate the values based on the policy which you have provided. So this is about configuration tab. So details is done, configuration is done, then the correlation. So correlation, we have two options, account correlation and manager correlation. Correlation can be done through UI level, rule level, again through aggregation task also you can specify correlation rules and all. So the higher priority goes to rule, then UI, then the aggregation task, means if you have specified anything in aggregation task also. So correlation in the sense like you have target, means in the target, let's say you have some user ID, okay, and the user ID value is, let's say, XYZ123, and this is target, let's say it is some web service application. In IAQ you have it as just UID and the same name is there, XYZ123. So when you onboard any application and during aggregation, if you want to get tagged, like what happens here is inside IAQ you will have multiple application, right? All these things got correlated based on this correlation rule or correlation configuration you have done. Okay, so that is like within IAQ, as I mentioned, UID, and the how correlation is to happen means for that you have to go to correlation account correlation. You have to specify application attribute and IAQ attribute, so that during aggregation what IAQ will do is it will go and check this ID with this. If this matches, it will tag here. Means if you are onboarding new application, new app will be linked to IAQ identity. Otherwise, it will be called as orphan account. It will create new account. IAQ will create new account. But we should, to avoid those things, creation of orphan account and all, right, we need to specify account correlation either through UI or rule. Same with manager correlation in the sense, so within IAQ, if you go to identity warehouse, you will see manager as an clickable link, right? For that you need to correlate, like what means you need to specify target attribute, with IAQ attribute. So here two attributes means during aggregation it will check, okay, whether it is matching or not, maybe because of employee number or employee ID with IAQ's employee number. So both will be checked. If it match, IAQ will correlate manager identity to the user's identity, so that you can click and you can view manager as well. So the next important tab is rules. So usually each applications will have aggregation rule and provisioning rule. Some connectors will have connector rules. That is like we have for delimited connectors, we have again it depends upon connectors. For most of the connectors, let's say if you are onboarding some delimited file, right, so you'll be having connector specific rules. So you can go to rules, you can view in the rules, like you'll be having aggregation rule, provisioning rules, schema rules and connector rules. So that like you have build, you'll be having build map, reiterate, post iterate, merge maps and all. So again for JDBC also you'll be having JDBC build map rule, and web service application, so you'll be having before after operation rules. So if you want to trigger any rule before operating something, before provisioning, before disabling, you need to call these things. And then we have aggregation and provisioning rules. So aggregation rule in the sense like you have correlation, creation, customization and managed entitlement customization, manager correlation. So the priority goes like this. Customization will be triggered first, means so during aggregation what happens is first IAQ will check whether any connector rule is configured or not. So usually it will get as map, then it will convert to resource object, then resource object will be given to aggregation rules. In the customization rule again you can modify object, then it will send to correlation, then creation. If correlation didn't happen, IAQ will check whether any creation rule are there or not. Again if creation rule is not specified, IAQ will go for default inbuilt creation rule. So if you want to create IAQ specific or application specific a creation, let's say you are onboarding any users and it didn't get correlated. So if you want to create your own means if you want to create a user with your own logic, that is like if you want to create with app and user ID, means if you want to create a user with this format, name need to be created in this format, right? You need to specify those things in the creation rule. And correlation again, if you want to correlate based on multiple attributes, check any specific correlation key with multiple, like email, user ID, employee number and all, that can be configured in the correlation rule. customization rule. If you want to customize any object based on any attribute, if you want to add some extra attributes and all, let's say like customization rule can be used in certain cases, like for delimited application or web service applications. So based on the status of user, if you want to disable IAQ attribute, there is a attribute called IAQ disabled. So if you want to modify this based on any attribute of means, let's say if user is active, it will shown as red, right? Sorry, it is shown as green, and inactive red. If you want to show this, so what you can do is during aggregation, you can specify that in customization rule, like if the attribute value is active, set IAQ disabled as false, otherwise set IAQ disabled as true, so that green and red means you will see that value in the IdentityIQ warehouse tab. So again, I have explained aggregation rule, provisioning rule, connector rule, how it is used or how we can write those things in separate video. Again, I will make separate video on rule execution, like how rule is executed and all. As I mentioned, this is like high level thing, so you just need to understand how we can utilize all these options within application onboarding. Then we have password policy. If you want to add any policy during password creation, during account creation, right, you can add those policies within password policies. Means you can create new policy, you can say what is the maximum length, minimum length, how many characters you want, means all the policies you can set and you can configure here. So the next thing will be common connectors. So I will explain those things in UI itself, like we have delimited file, JDBC, Active Directory, LDAP, and web service application. Again, I will make separate video for each connectors in the future, but I'll go through some high level things like common things or general attributes or generic attributes which need to be configured. So within my IAQ repository, I have added some common connectors. Means you can go to concepts. I have Active Directory, delimited, JDBC, LDAP, and web service. Means in future also I'll be adding required things, means details within the system. Like if you want to know what is Active Directory and all, you can come here and you can see. And again, required script as well will be added here. And like in the first topic, like how to start, right? Like I have mentioned that you can have onboarding form. Like you can check this and like just download this and just go through this document. Like it will have some required approvals, owners details and all. Like it's a SailPoint provided application onboarding questionnaires. So means if you want, you can develop on top of that. You can add some questions on top of this, and you can modify these document. Means this is required when you want to onboard any application, and this can be shared with the application team. So they have to fill this and provide it to you. And for each application, as I mentioned, there will be certain things like if you want to create any web service application, like I made one video on like before, like if you want to create a web service application, you can use a Google's script. Like you can go to app, means there is an app script within Google itself. You can create that and can utilize that option for web service application. And same for LDAP and JDBC. I will be uploading configuration videos in the future, like how you can create a local LDAP system and all. And delimited sample also I have provided here, like how you can create a CSV or text file for creating delimited file. And this is about concepts. Again, application related, like if you want to onboard any application, right, there are certain things need to be mentioned, or there are certain things, generic things as I mentioned. So let me show you. Like if you go to Active Directory, right, so as I mentioned, like you'll be having feature string. Means here you can see you have a feature string like provisioning, sync provisioning, authenticate, manager lookup, search, unstructured target, unlock, enable password, current password and all. So here, let's say if you remove this provisioning, so that particular application won't go for provisioning and all. It will create manual work item and all. So if you want to disable any provisioning, you can do that. And I'll show you another thing. The delimited. So you can see direct permission, no random access. So there is a command called connector debug within console. So what it does is, like, if you want to troubleshoot something, or if you want to retrieve the users, or let's say you have onboarded some application, and before triggering any aggregation, if you want to check, okay, how you are getting users and all. So what you can do is, you can go to console, you can execute connector debug, provide the required details like application, how you need to iterate account and all, so that you'll get the resource object for each accounts in that application. So to get that for delimited file, you need to remove no random access. And again, as I mentioned, you have a Discord schema here. So Discord schema in the sense, so you can go to configuration tab under schema tab. So if you click on Discord schema, it will auto populate the required or the required attributes within that page. So here you can see account correlation config. So in the UI under rules, you have to configure these rules and also that means from debug page, it is considered like it is said as like account correlation config. And you have attributes here, account aggregation end and start will be there. So you need to configure this. So things which you need to configure are like, or you need to do for delimited file is in schema. You can see for each application, this is the standard things, like you have to provide the name, description, the type and all, and managed and entitlement true and all, so that you can view from UI itself. So the particularly for a delimited file, you will have build map rule and all. If you configure build map rule, you can see those things in here. Think it's not there here, but again, I will show you other application. Let's say Active Directory. So within Active Directory, right, like so here you can see a managed attribute customization rule. Like this, you will have other three rule, like creation rule, correlation rules and all. So under Active Directory, there are certain things like if you want to exclude any attribute from provisioning, so that you can add, like you can add a custom attribute. There is an attribute called exclude attribute from provisioning. You can add that attribute so that if you trigger any provisioning for that particular attribute which is mentioned within that attribute, right, like it will be excluded. And you can see you can add multiple servers. It's like a domain controller. And domain name, as I mentioned, like it will be company name and com will be there. It's a root actually. So again, child will be users, groups, computers. You can add anything. Means again, that's how it is structured. And there are some specific attribute which are added. Means there are some generic attributes which can be added on all the applications. So that I have mentioned here. You can come here, you can see. You can see create account, time lag, max read time mode, maximum retry count, retriable errors. So these attributes you can add it on all the all the applications. So that is like, let's say you triggered some provisioning on any application and you are getting some error, and if you re-trigger it, it might work sometimes. So in like for those things, what you can do is, or for those errors, what you can do is, there is a attribute called retriable error. So you can copy this, paste it in your application. So what you have to do is, you have to add that error. So if you add that error, right, so IIQ will retry to or it will retry to provision the same thing. So in that case, like you can add maximum retry, like how many times it has to retry it. Let's say it failed first time, again it will retry to provision, and again means the limit also you can provide here, like 5 times it will try to provision it, and again if it failed, then you'll get the failure message and all. But what happens is like let's say during Active Directory or any web service application account creation or provisioning, it is failing because of some connectivity issue, which is like happened only for some period of time, like maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, the system was down. So what you can do is you can add attribute retrieval error, and you can add the error which you are getting, and IIQ will retry to provision those things. And you can see create account time lag, time in seconds to wait after creating an account and before calling get account. That is like, so you IIQ will create account, right? Like some application there will be a latency, like where creation will take some time, and the single aggregation means IIQ, as soon as IIQ triggers create operation, it will do a single aggregation immediately. So to do single aggregation, if IIQ wants to wait for some time, maybe 25 seconds, 30 seconds, you can mention it in create account time lag. Those things you can do. And as I mentioned, like each connector has its own configurations, right? Like in case of delimited file or delimited connector, you have to specify the file path, and you have to specify the columns name also. In case of JDBC, you have to specify the queries, like how to get the users and all. So that query you need to specify in the JDBC. Right, like in case of web service application, what happens is like you have to specify the URL for each operation to get the user, modify user and all. So again, it depends on the operation and each web service application. And Active Directory, the different thing for Active Directory is like what domain controller you are having an IQ service. So basically IQ service is used for Windows application like Azure, Active Directory and all. So why we need IQ services in the sense like Windows application built on like .NET framework, but SailPoint is a Java based application, right? And IQ service acts as a mediator, like it converts whatever the comments provided from IIQ to Active Directory. It converts it like understandable, means Windows understandable language, and again the same thing, reverse will also happen. So that's why we need IQ service, and IQ service has to be hosted on some Windows application. It no need to be in like a domain controller. It can be anything. And there is another application called or software called Password Interceptor. You have to install it on Active Directory. Means if you want to replicate the password change in that system, Active Directory in all the domains, so you have to install Password Interceptor in all domain controllers, so that whenever the reset triggered either from Active Directory or from SailPoint, it will be replicated in all the or synchronized will happen in all the domain controllers. Those two software is required. And in case of mainframe, connector gateway is required. You need to install connector gateway as well. So within application, I have Active Directory, delimited, JDBC, LDAP, and web service. Again, in future, I will go through each, or I will make video on each connectors, like how you can have a local LDAP system, how you can have local JDBC system and all. So for that, you need to install a workbench and all. I have made separate video to install how you can install MySQL workbench and all. Install that, and you can have a local JDBC system. And delimited, you can do it yourself. Like you just need to place a file and you need to aggregate it. You need to use that file in the whatever the application you are onboarding. Active Directory, it will be difficult to have a local Active Directory system, but LDAP, JDBC, delimited web service you can have. I will make a separate video for a web service application for Keycloak. Like you can use Keycloak as a web service application, and you can utilize it as a web service application, and you can onboard it into IIQ as well. So this is about the generic connectors which we use in IIQ. So we'll see some app related issues and troubleshooting stuff for those issues. So generally we will have connectivity issues, aggregation issue, correlation issue, provisioning issues. So again, Connectivity, aggregation, and provisioning issues are specific to the connectors. Each application or each connector has its own issues. Like generally, all revolve around the server itself. Okay, so it's all under server. Like maybe connectivity issues. Connectivity in this means you are not able to communicate. Not able to communicate. SSL exception or firewall blocking, login issue, login in the sense username and password, authentication, you can say auth issue also. Again, maybe server is down. These are the general things. Like if you pick JDBC, Active Directory, or any application, right? These are all common. Like certificate, like you will get SSL exception, firewall, you will get a connection reset error. So make sure the app server, the IIQ app server, is able to communicate or connect to the target system. So what happens is, like you have a IIQ app server, right? App server, maybe it is Unix or Windows. Okay, so you would have hosted your application either of these OS. So the server, let's say you have a server 1 and target, let's say you have a target server. So whatever the cert is hosted on this, means some application required or some server required a communication, like so that encrypted communication, so that you have to import whatever the cert imported here have to be imported here as well. So that need to be done. And firewall, some targets server need to be whitelisted, like your app server need to be added into their application and all to whitelist, or firewall blockage will happen. So those things you need to work with DevOps team, network team and all. Then login issue. So yeah, means the first step what you need to do is, right, like make sure means you're able to connect to that system or you're able to ping that server. Then the next thing is check through tools, means as I mentioned, like browser or some, like there will be IDE and all, or Postman. So you have to means depending upon the application or connector you have configured, right? So you need to have a local system where you're able to communicate with the target system. Like for Active Directory we have Apache, right? So try to communicate or connect to that system, check you're able to connect or not. So if you're not able to connect from your local system also, right, like you can reach the application team and check whether there is any issue or not, whether there are package, like sometimes there will be downtime, they are doing upgrade and all, things will happen. So you can check with them. Next thing is like make sure your application is also good, like application server. Make sure your app server is not having any issue, means there is no load issues or not, like there is no downtime on your application also. Make sure your application is up and running. And again, the thing is like you can add the logger as well in all these cases. Like a connectivity issue sometimes related to means most of the time I can say it's a server, all these things only will happen. So but let's say aggregation is not happening, so you triggered the aggregation but it's failing, right, for some reason. So what you can do is you can add logger in the log4j2, then under the SailPoint log or Catalina you can check the things. So you can get the logs, go to community, SailPoint community, so check on community, and like some might have faced the same issue what you have faced, and there will be a solution for this. Or go for a support ticket. So support team will help you on your issue. So they will give you suggestions and all. Then you can means the issue can be resolved. The other thing, like for aggregation, right, you can use console here. Like there is a command called connector debug. So you can check like whether account able to, means you able to iterate all the accounts. So then if you're able to do it here, right, then there might be some issue. Means again, if you're able to do it here, you should be able to do it from a UI as well. So yeah, means this is a basic troubleshooting step also, like using connector debug from console, iterate the accounts for any specified application. If you're able to get the resource object here, then means most of the time it should work. Then the next thing, again, provisioning errors. So as I mentioned, you can add a retrieval error, and again, all sometimes there will be a downtime for like few minutes, few seconds, right? So you can add a retrieval error. So the provisioning will retry for some time, like after some time, and like the count which you have given, like 4 or 5 times, it will trigger. It will try to reprovision it. If it works, then it's well and good. Otherwise, again, you have to take action on the error. Like it's specific to error. There is no a general or a specified thing saying, okay, this is the error, and this error you will get all the time. Error might change from application to application, connector to connector. So basically how I troubleshoot is like I will have a rule, means standalone rule for create, modify, right? So I will try to use the rule. Means you can have a rule for all the operation. Go to console, trigger it, or try to call those rule, and make sure it's like able to provision the things. Means all these things need to be done on lower environment. Make sure you are doing all these things on lower environment first. So if you're able to solve in lower environment, the same thing can be done on production. So if it is working in lower environment, if it is not working in production, then you just need to compare both the systems. So that's how I do. And correlation issue, basically how it happens is like, let's say you have a user ID like this in the target system. In the target system, it is like X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. In IIQ, it is like X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, A, right? Or maybe here it is A. In IIQ, it is just 1, 2, 3. So what you can do is you can use a split here. You can just check before A, or you can have some logics to get the UID, not without an admin account. Maybe A, B, C. It's depending upon the organization. So you can get the UID and compare it with IIQ. Means you have to do it through correlation rule itself. You can't go with correlation like UI correlation. You have to go with a rule only. And sometimes like case sensitive, and you also need to have a multiple. Like sometimes you have to check with email. When you check with email, right, again caps, art, and all you need to see. And the better option is like instead of UI, and go with a rule only, right? Then yeah, so as I mentioned, the connectivity, aggregation, and provisionings are related to server issue, like maybe you are not able to communicate based, like maybe because of downtime or not able SSL exception, firewall login, or auth issue only. So have a tool, means local tool, and try to communicate with those servers. So you can always submit a support ticket so that they will help you on the issue. Yeah, this is all about onboarding issues or application issues. Thanks for watching.